All right, welcome back to United in the States. July 1st marks the start of the fiscal new year for Manchester United, so expect a ton of business to get done this week. A lot's been announced already, and like I said, expect even more news to start rolling in. Not one at a time like in the past, but United are working on multiple deals at the same time, so very exciting time. So let's get into it. Starting first off with front office news. I know this might seem boring, not like something people are interested in, but it is huge for the club. Believe me. At the beginning of the day, around 8 a.m. UK time, 3 a.m. East Coast time, David Ormstein dropped an absolute bomb announcing Dan Ashworth to United as official, and he's starting immediately. Now, why is that important? All right, so Dan Ashworth, previously sporting director at Newcastle, kind of a GM, president of, football operations type role, the guy who oversees the whole thing and makes all the sporting decisions. He was previously at Newcastle, from Brighton. He was at England before that, and then West Brom. This guy has a great track record, very highly thought of everywhere he is. And there was a word at West Brom where it was, you don't know how important Dan Ashworth is until Dan Ashworth takes off or leaves. So he was at Newcastle, having left Brighton for about £3 million, and we found this out, and I'll explain how we found that out. And then it was announced that United were interested in Dan Ashworth, and immediately Newcastle put him on gardening leave. Now, gardening leave is a contract put into, or clause put into the contracts, especially a lot in football, the executive soccer, where it says if they are no longer employed by the organization, then there is a buffer period before they can start a job at a new business. And the reason why is because in a sport like this, or any kind of business like this, sports, there's very important information out there that this person has, an intimate knowledge of player recruitment, transfer dealings, sales, prices, costs, etc. This is very valuable information for a club, and they don't want him to step into his new job and go and take all of that information to the next job, and then his new club is able to go in and do all those deals that his previous club has been working on, for however long it's been. So Newcastle immediately threw Dan Ashworth in garden leave, and then they slapped a £20 million price tag on him. £20 million. And United fans, when they heard about this, they, understandably, were like, this is crazy. But you kind of found out why when, some news dropped a few months later, when we found out Dan Ashworth committed the dry snitch of the decade when he communicated with Manchester United soon-to-be executive Omar Barada, who wasn't even in his job yet, on an Ineos email account. Ineos, obviously, the parent company that owns Manchester United, Ineos Sport, or 29% of Manchester United. And not only did he communicate through his personal email to Omar Barada on the Ineos email, he forwarded this communication to his Newcastle email and then deleted it from the server, trying to hide it. But Newcastle, when they found out he wanted to leave, they went back through his emails, and lo and behold, what did they find? That he was out there, doing them dirty. So they immediately threw him on gardening leave, and, they were fronting like he wasn't going to be able to leave unless United paid up huge sums of money. They threatened to bring him to arbitration, or he threatened to bring Newcastle arbitration in May. And I don't know if that happened or it didn't happen, or if they decided against it and decided to negotiate. But we found out this morning, and obviously it didn't just happen this morning, it was definitely agreed upon before, that United and Newcastle had agreed a fee. And both sides are saying that they won the negotiation. The United sides are saying that the negotiation was, or the fee was, for less than $5 million. I don't know if maybe they had the arbitration and it was, seen to be unreasonable for Newcastle to ask that much, or maybe they just felt like they wouldn't win if they did take it to arbitration. So they decided to negotiate in good faith, and we got a good fee for it. I've heard anything from $2 to $5 million. Newcastle fans are saying that we paid $20 million. Absolute nonsense. I'm guaranteeing that's not true. Of course, I'll probably eat my words in 6 months or a year. But you know what? I don't think that it was that. Either way, United have their man in place, the guy who is going to set up the structure, not necessarily the guy who's making the transfer decisions themselves, but he's the guy who's going to create the processes, hire the right people, put them in place, put those scouting networks in place to build a repeatable, successful system for the club. And then behind that, it was also announced by David Ornstein that Christopher Vivell, I'm not saying if I'm saying that right, formerly of Chelsea, is coming in an interim basis or a short-term basis as sort of a transfer expert. And his speciality is his talent ID and his ability to, work within a multi-club model, because before he was at Chelsea, he was at the Red Bull Group. Funny story, he actually just came off of gardening leave himself. He was at the Red Bull Group. He left there a little bit contentiously from what I understand. And then he went to Chelsea, part of their new restructuring by Todd Boehly and his group, American owner of Chelsea, Todd Boehly. And he got there and he found out he did not have an actual role. And his job was taken over by two sporting directors that they hired after him, these co-sporting directors whose names I don't remember. But this guy apparently has, done a very good job, has recruited a ton of people to the Red Bull Group, including Holland, Shesko, Adeyemi from Dortmund right now, just a ton of really good players. And he's a guy who has knowledge of both the transfer market, recruiting, and also working within, like I said, this multi-club model, which United are striving to now that they have United, Nice, and whatever that Swiss club under. And, he has some knowledge of this. So I think this will turn into a long role, but in the short term, he's going to be helping Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox, and the rest of the team with the transfer market, because this transfer market is so important. And I'm glad Ineos saw the need to make sure they got their guys in as quickly as possible. We went from Dan Ashworth possibly having to sit out until December 2025 to him starting July 1st. Omar Barada's in place within the next 2 weeks, I believe. And then we also have Christopher Vivell in place to help with the transfer business. Moving on to the manager news. So Ten Hag, this is nothing new. His contract is done, expected to be signed this week. Ruud van Nistelrooy also expected to sign. He's officially turned down Bournemouth, or pulled his name out of the running for the Bournemouth job, and he's joining United. Ruud being one of Manchester United's best strikers of all time. He adds instant credibility for the coaching staff, younger players, older players. Ten Hag, the knock against him, and you can tell, I don't think he's terrible. I don't think it really matters as much, but the knock against him is that he hasn't had as much charisma. And I think in England, they expect their manager to be a little bit more charismatic. I'm sure it is wherever it is, but they especially expect someone who they can they respect and they trust. Like Ten Hag played at the highest level, but he wasn't as good as Ruud van Nistelrooy, who was Premier League's top striker for United, and then he moved to Real Madrid, and he was awesome there as well. So this is a guy who's competed at the highest level, and the United players can look at him and say, okay, this guy has done what I want to do, or more than me. I have to respect him in that regard. There were some grumblings about his training method or his tactics, but I don't think that's what he's here for. I think he's here to provide leadership and mentoring and some guidance for the strikers, because obviously you don't score that many goals if you don't know what you're doing. So Højlund and possibly Xerxes, if he does show up, they would do well to listen to him and learn from him. And then another addition was announced on the back of this. Rene Haak from Go Ahead Eagles, another Dutch manager. So we got the Dutch connection between Ten Hag, Ruud, and Rene Haak. We'll see what happens with Mitchell van der Gaard if he sticks around. But this is another guy. Ten Hag has a connection with him from, I believe, either FC Twente or Utrecht. Back in the day, they were assistants together. He actually recommended him for the job, or Ten Hag recommended Haak for the job at that club. And they've always kind of had this good relationship, a kind of tongue-in-cheek adversarial relationship. I think he beat Ten Hag when they were at Ajax, and he kind of winked and was like, yeah, he's always found me annoying kind of thing. I think he's a great manager. He's very good at getting the best out of limited resources. The club he took over was a yo-yo club. promoted one year, relegated the next year. Largely, they were in the second division of the Eredivisie, the Dutch league, and he took them from second division to European places. So a guy who was a good coach, got a tremendous amount of his players, and there's clips about him online just like absolutely losing his mind at either his players or his staff for not following instructions. So a great motivator, and another guy who could kind of like crack the whip for Ten Hag and for the team. And Ten Hag can focus on what he does best, which is planning and tactics, and maybe being kind of that good guy and not having to be, the bad cop all the time, because there's no structure around him like there was in the past regime. Moving on to the transfer news this week. Just started with the ins. Things are definitely heating up from a transfer perspective. And there's rumors that, 3 deals could be completed this week, which would be amazing. The 3 deals that could be completed are Matthias de Ligt, Manuel Ugarte, and Joshua Zirkzee. Zirkzee, you've actually heard me talk about before. Matthias de Ligt is now the top targeted center back. He's a former Ten Hag player at Ajax. Ten Hag made him Ajax captain at 19. He's a leader, very vocal leader as well, lead by example, and, give rousing speeches kind of guy. We'll see how good his English is, but he does that very well in Dutch. As far as his player profile, he's a decent height. He's 6'2". He's a very aggressive center back. He's a big, thick guy. He's a good passer, very good on the ball. He's very good in the air as well. He's got some hops on him. The question is he a good partner for Martinez? That's up for debate. Is he going to be a good fit for the system Ten Hag tries to play? So, the idea is you want to play a high line, or at least Ten Hag wants to play a high line. You have 2 center backs. Ideally, you have a pairing where you have complementing styles. Usually it's one aggressive center back who pushes up, tries to win the ball back, tries to, head everything, tackle people. And then you have a second center back who's going to be less aggressive and is going to play that sweeper role. Kind of like, bad example, the old school 90s NBA, you'd have like the shot blocker big man, and then you'd have like the rebounding big man. So like Hakeem Olajuwon would go and contest the shots, and then Otis Thorpe would clean up the glass behind him. He would get all the rebounds behind him. Or maybe even like, if you think of the back four, the defenders, if they play a 4 as a secondary, the center backs are the 2 safeties. One guy is more like the strong safety coming in, patrolling the flat or the middle, whatever. And then the other one is kind of that free safety, staying back, mopping up anything that gets past the first guy. So that's kind of the ideal center back partnership. I think in Martinez, Lisandro Martinez, we have that aggressive, jump out, maybe not like kill everyone with headers, but he's a very front foot, aggressive, step out and try to win tackles player. Ideally, you would pair him with someone with elite speed who could kind of sweep up everything around him. I don't know if de Ligt is that guy. Maybe Ten Hag is going to have sort of a different system. Maybe we're going to try to keep the ball more. Maybe we won't play quite as high. But I think if you pair them together, they're both very similar. They're both that guy who wants to push up and be aggressive, and they both kind of need that other defender to be quick and sweep up behind him. But I kind of like him as a player. He's a guy who Ten Hag knows. He obviously has great qualities. I think he understands how Ten Hag wants to play. So I'm sure he would step in, and there would be very little, kind of a learning curve there. Maybe some Premier League learning curve, but I think for him, he would step in and know what Ten Hag wants. And I think it would be great to have 2 center backs who could pass. The next target, the one who was our first top target, the first bid we made, Jared Brantwaite, This one seems like it might be off, or at least for now it's off. Everton, they sold some youth player for like way over market value. I don't think they were necessarily counting on that, but I think maybe they found out that wouldn't necessarily be enough to satisfy the profit and sustainability rules. But then they ended up selling another center back, I think Fofana, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not Fofana, but they sold the center back to Italy for about 15 million euros or 50 million pounds. And I think they believe that satisfies the PSR requirements they needed to get to by June 30th. and it doesn't feel like there's that, sense of urgency anymore. So they're not quite as desperate to sell. United don't want to bid above, 40 million, 50 million maybe. They don't want to do a second bid unless they know Everton is going to accept it. And Everton seems to be sticking to their final price of, 60 or 70 million pounds, which I think is ridiculous. And I'm happy if United walk away from it, because I don't think he's like a generational talent or anything like that, where you have to go out and sign him knowing this guy is going to be your best player for 10 years. First of all, he'll probably play on the left and be behind Lisandro Martinez. I know he's two-footed and he can play in either slot. Maybe he would start on the right next to Lisandro Martinez, and De Ligt would be kind of that third option. But I think this is a guy you need to come in for the right price. And I think as a principal, Ineos want to show they're not going to be taken advantage of the way Woodward and Arnold and the Glazers were. So they need to stand firm on their negotiations and make sure that, they're not overpaying, they're not buckling. I think, waiting out Newcastle, even though it took, 5 months or whatever it was, 6 months, 8 months, waiting out Newcastle and getting their guy shows that they're not going to just go and overspend like clubs expected United to do in the past. So I think at least this summer, even though it's crucial that United have a good summer, they also have to make sure that they don't turn into the fish like everyone saw the Glazers as, or the previous regime. And they actually are a team or a club that's taken seriously in the transfer market, and people negotiate in good faith. And then finally, third center back, I think we're going to sign two center backs. Jean-Claude Todibo, a player who I really like, I think would have been a no-brainer as the right-sided center back. UEFA's rule said he couldn't be the signing just because they wanted to have multi-club ownership. The only reason we could play in the same competition as Nice, the Europa League, is we didn't do any business, no transfers, player transfers between the two clubs. I think that meant to be signings, loan deals, whatever. There's some loopholes there that other clubs have taken advantage of. I think this rule is new just because of, Red Bull Leipzig doing some nonsense last year. But United believe that there are some loopholes that they can't exploit. So they hired lawyers or a team of lawyers to fight this ruling, because they believe placing the club, or from what I understand, from what legal experts have said on Twitter, or I don't know if they're legal experts or not, but they're legally sounding Twitter accounts. They're saying that they think that the loophole is that by placing the Nice in a blind trust, they are no longer controlled by the same entities. So because it's in a blind trust, the blind trust is making decisions, they're no longer part of the decision-making process, then they feel like they should be able to negotiate with Nice. And they're hoping that is the ruling, or that is the language that would get them an in to sign Todibo. I think this is amazing. I hope they really are able to get this done. And then, I know court cases take a long time, but apparently they can push for a immediate ruling just to see if, it'll get ruled on before there's even any sort of, not trial, but any sort of discussion on the matter. And if they can get the ruling up front, then they can go out and they can sign Jean-Claude Todibo immediately. And I think that's a player who United like the deal. Jean-Claude Todibo likes the deal. I think Ineos like him. Ten Hag likes him. It's a no-brainer. He's a perfect fit. Talking about the way you have complementing styles, I think he's very good on the ball, and he can be aggressive, but he also has, very good pace, and he can be kind of that complement to Lisandro Martinez. But I think, him and De Ligt, they're similar in some ways, but I think he has a little bit more, mobility and athleticism to him, where I think he'd be a better fit next to Lisandro Martinez. Next, at defensive midfielder, Manuel Ugarte from Uruguay. This came out like basically in the last week. It's a guy who, United's been scouting. A lot of clubs were on top of this move last year. Liverpool wanted him. Other teams wanted him. He ended up moving to PSG from Sporting Lisbon, and it didn't work out. They signed him before they brought in their manager, their head coach, and they weren't a fit style-wise. So he didn't play quite as much as he would have liked. And then on top of that, coming in, PSG and the manager told him they're not expecting him to play more coming up in this year. So he was open to find a new club, and United stepped in, and it looks like we're the front runner, and we have a great chance to sign him, very soon. Sources in Uruguay are saying the deal is basically done. Top tier journalists are not quite as optimistic, but it does seem like there's a lot of smoke here for there not to be fire. Now, Ugarte is a player who is a pure destroyer. He's going to sit in front of the back four and mop up. Not the best on the ball, like kind of sloppy passing wise. Like he's got technical ability. He can dribble in tight spaces, but he's not a guy you're going to give the ball to and expect him to spray passes all over the field. He's more a guy who can get the ball, give it to the more skilled player, the way Casemiro was at Real Madrid, and then, play his role winning the ball back and passing it to other guys to go, play offense kind of thing. I like this guy, just like De Ligt, he's kind of growing on me a little bit more. I would have liked the Amadou Onana. He's too expensive, I think, at this point. I don't think United should sign anyone for more than £50 million. And Ugarte is a guy who can be gotten at a discount. De Ligt, I think it was 42 million he's quoted as by Bayern. We could probably come in and try to lowball 30, 35. Ugarte is another guy. They spent 60 million on him. I think he's available for around 50 or 40 to 50. So we should try to get him at the low end. And he's playing US tonight in about 5 minutes. So, great scouting opportunity. I'd like to get a second midfield to go along with him. I've heard that Amrabat could potentially stay, but I would love someone who could, duplicate what Kobe Mainoo does, although that's very hard, but someone who could give him a rest, play alongside the center mid, and then next to Bruno or Mount as well, because we have to preserve Kobe at all costs. And then from the signing of a striker perspective, I think it's still Joshua Zirkzee is the main target. This one I'm less confident about. It does seem a little bit like agent talk and, clubs posturing. It looks a little bit like his agent and AC Milan are kind of fighting, and they're posturing in the media. There's rumors that AC Milan are out of the race. There's rumors that United are about to make a bid, and Xerxes happy to go to United. Ten Hag has apparently spoken to him. But we still haven't heard from Romano or Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano or David Ornstein, saying that they think this is, in its last stages, or, Xerxes is ready to go. It's just final details. It looks like United still are kind of convincing Xerxes to come, if that makes sense. They're still kind of, they're figuring out what the performance package or the pay wages, the package would be, the compensation to his agent. They're figuring out, he has a release clause from Bologna. It's 33.8 million pounds, basically. Very good discount for a striker. But, at AC Milan, a team he agreed to go to, everything was all in place. And then the agent fees demanded they pissed off AC Milan, and then there was an issue. They have bad blood between the agent and between Xerxes, or Xerxes' agent and the club, AC Milan. So that deal was not, signed at the time. And, July 1st to August 15th is when his release clause is active. So, there's a month and a half where, something needs to be done and figured out to get Joshua Xerxes at this price. United seem eager to do the deal. Ten Hag likes him. I think he's the perfect fit for our team. I think when we have a false nine, a striker who can drop deep and link play, we look like a completely different team. You saw it when Martial was healthy. You saw it in the last game when we played McTominay and Bruno. Bruno kind of in that false nine role. It changes the game for us, and it changes our ability to play with, and it makes the wingers even better too. Our wingers like Garnacho and Rashford love getting in behind, love being that furthest forward player, not necessarily don't love like creating for the striker. So I think it would help unlock Rashford again. But I still feel like we need to do something to convince him to sign. So hopefully it's Ruud and Ten Hag's conversations and us signing other good players and making it comfortable where he feels like, he's okay splitting time with Højlund, and, the best player is going to play and guys will get hurt or whatever. And we're going to make sure that, he is put in the best position to succeed. then I think it'll get done. But like, I don't think anyone else is really on United's radar at this point. I think he's the main target from the striker position. No other solid links, just some other names thrown out there for other positions. But it sounds like 2 center backs, a midfielder, and a striker. Those are the deals we're trying to get done. And then maybe after player sales, then we'll look at other things. Moving on to player sales, Greenwood, Casemiro, and Sancho are up for sale for sure. Greenwood still linked to a bunch of teams. Casemiro looking like Saudi Arabia. Sancho, it's a little more quiet, but there have been some links to Juventus who want him on loan. I think he was offered to Barcelona as a rumor. And I've heard he's been offered to Premier League clubs as well. I'd be fine if he went to Arsenal or Chelsea. Like, I don't care. And I don't think those teams want to sign him, but I'd be more than happy for him to go and play at those clubs. Just get him off for a wage book, and that would be fine. But let me know, just hit a comment, throw a comment in there, and let me know if you would, sell Sancho to another Premier League team. Varane, Tom Heaton, and Johnny Evans, as well as Brandon Williams and Charlie McNeil and some others, they're gone as free agents. But Tom Heaton and Johnny Evans might stick around in some capacity. I heard Johnny Evans, they're looking to see what happens at the center back market. If we sign 2 center backs, maybe he leaves. If we sign 1 center back, or maybe Maguire or Lindelof leaves, maybe Johnny Evans sticks around for another year. Maybe he sticks around as a coach if, he's not needed at center back. Tom Heaton as well, I think he could be a coach capacity. I think he's with England as a goalkeeper coach right now, not really as a player. But he's been our 3rd goalkeeper for a while, and kind of like part of that, homegrown rule, making sure we have enough players who are homegrown. I think you need 7 registered homegrown players. United are also listening to offers for Maguire, Lindelof, McTominay, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Facundo Pellistri, and Hannibal. I like Hannibal. He was a wonder kid. We signed him. He was very expensive. I don't think he's kind of lived up to the hype yet. Maybe he still needs some time. His loan at Valencia was really bad, but he has shown some promise when he played for United. We'll just see if, Ten Hag rates him when he gets back, because he played him and then all of a sudden he dropped him. So maybe it's something where, there's a discipline issue, or Hannibal has some growing up to do. If we sold him, I wouldn't be devastated, but I think there's a player there, and hopefully he figures out. Pellistri, I'm less, excited about. I hope he plays well in the Copa America, just so we can get a bigger transfer fee for him. Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof, I would keep. Actually, the only person I'd really definitely sell is Maguire. I keep Lindelof because I think he's more mobile than Maguire. He's better on the ball. I think he fits what Ten Hag wants to do better. And then McTominay I'd keep just because, I watched him sing Sweet Caroline after we won the FA Cup. And that guy's all right with me. All right. He's come up big a couple times. Scott McTominay can stick around for another year. It's fine. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we don't really need a right back right now. Maybe we'll get one in the later on in the window. But if he sticks around for another year, I wouldn't be super upset. I mean, let me know, who would you keep in that group? Would you keep Maguire versus Lindelof? Would you sell both of them? Would you keep McTominay or Wan-Bissaka? I think most people don't care about Pellistri and Hannibal, but let me know if you would want one of those guys to stay. And then, United internationals at Euros and Copa America. England with the absolute snooze fest against Slovakia. They got, lucky to get through. 95th minute bicycle kick from Jude Bellingham, and then extra time header from Harry Kane. Great across the box header from Ivan Toney before that. But I think the star of the show was Kobbie Mainoo, who was probably England's best player that match. And honestly, it was his first competitive start for England, and it's a knockout match. And he stepped up and looked amazing. And I think the players need to kind of catch up to his level. Like, literally, England should build around Kobbie Mainoo. No offense to Jude Bellingham, Foden, Saka, whoever. Bruno was in action today for Portugal against Slovenia. I thought he played very well. Portugal won on penalties. Bruno took his penalty, was ice cold. But the star of the show was obviously Diego Costa, who saved the first 3 penalties by Slovenia. Never seen that in my life. That is Superman stuff. And then Copa America, still in the group stage. I think final match tonight. Garnacho got some run finally. Argentina won their first 2 matches, so they rotated heavily, brought in Garnacho. He played for about 60 minutes, played well, ran around, pressed, won the ball back a couple times. Great to see that Ten Hag training coming through. Was really lively, was running at the Peruvian players, although they were fouling the crap out of him. And I think that, they were really pressing the wings, and it made it a little harder for him to get in. But I think he's a big talent. I'm glad he got some playing time. Hopefully he can get some time in the knockouts. But, they subbed him off at 60 minutes. So I feel like they just, gave him some time to pacify him. And then lastly, U.S. play tonight. Actually, they're playing right now against Uruguay and Man United target Manuel Ugarte. So again, great scouting opportunity. U.S. need to win. Probably should be a good game. I say that, and I'm going to turn on the TV, and U.S. will be down 4 goals already. But yeah, that's it. Let me know your thoughts on all of United staff signings, coaching signings, player targets. Also, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Please like the video. And if you haven't already, like the video. And of course, hit the bell for notifications, because who wouldn't want to see me immediately when I start talking into their cell phone or their computer, laptop, tablet, whatever. So up the Reds, and let's go USA.